What's up guys, welcome back. As a big time JRPG fan, it is my absolute pleasure to talk to you today about Nihon Falcom's latest entry into the longest running storied JRPG, The Legend of Heroes, Trails Through Daybreak 2, the direct successor to Trails Through Daybreak 1. And let me start off by saying that this review is for anyone completely new to the series as well as for seasoned Trails players looking for the next big thing. Furthermore, unless clearly stated, this review is completely spoiler free. A big shout out to NIS America for sending over a review code which culminated into today's video. We've got a lot of ground to cover guys, so let's dive right in. Allow me to start off by addressing the elephant in the room. It's been an ongoing discussion ever since the second Trails game released whether or not you need to play every entry into the series in proper order to enjoy the games and understand the story. Trails Through Daybreak 2 manages to introduce any new player to the world of The Legend of Heroes in an extremely effective way in what I would like to call a three-pronged attack. Firstly, it introduces every character in the game, even those at the very heart of both Trails Through Daybreak 1 and 2, almost as if it is expected of the player to need a quick refresher, even though the previous entry came out in the West only about half a year ago. Secondly, you'll start off the game with an effective video recap of the main events of said previous entry. On top of that, the catalog is as extensive as any in a video game, allowing for read-ups on just about every faction, nation, essential character, timeline and synopsis of all previous entries into this series. Lastly, during the game you will run into characters who have their roots in games dating as far back as the Trails in the Sky saga, that is about 10 games ago. More recent entries are there as well, and for each of them the veil is lifted through flashbacks or data reports, or you'll find them reminiscing about the good old days in their previous professions.
Yeah, I know what you mean. We've been through a lot since we crossed paths again half a year ago.
In any event, in Trails Through Daybreak 2 we follow up on the events of Daybreak 1, where Van Arkride, a Spriggan, is joined by a bunch of familiar faces. One of my personal favorites, Trails into Reverie's own Swin Abel. As can be expected from this series, the writing is good, the story is interesting, and for the first time ever in the series we see some new mechanics which have a direct influence on the progression of the story, for better or worse. You see, the first Daybreak game features a very focused story, high pace, great characters start to finish. Daybreak 2, on the other hand, offers various routes for you to explore, dividing your party. This is a crucial departure, as you'll be spending quite a few hours zeroing in on a selection of your characters. However, after finishing up a certain path, you are still forced to play through the other part as if the events are playing out simultaneously, with you, the player, having to direct both. This does break up the flow of the story, more so than I would like to admit. The second new mechanic in Daybreak 2 interrupting the flow of the story is the Märchen Garten, a virtual space developed by Marduk, effectively a brand new dungeon. Although it is completely optional, save for the first floor, the benefits of going into the garden whenever you have an opportunity are very compelling, allowing you to gain some serious enhancements and upgrades as you make your way through this virtual palace and all of the upgrade and unlocked menus therein. I absolutely love this colorful world and all of the RPG bells and whistles it adds, but by comparison, the story of Daybreak 1 does feel much more concentrated and compelling as a result. If you have ever played Atelier Lydie and Sewell, the Märchen Garten feels very much like those dream paintings. If you haven't played this game yet, be sure to check out my review, it's a fantastic Atelier game. For anyone interested in developer insights, here's a fun piece of trivia on the creation of the Märchen Garten. As you cannot play through the game continuously with the entire party, as a result of splitting up the characters on the one hand, and the almost exclusive cityscape battle environments on the other hand, the development team, quote, expressed their wish to also have characters fight in more natural environments, to have that sense of spaciousness, and where we could circumvent this limitation, end quote, of dividing the party. And then there is a third component affecting the progression of the otherwise linear story in the form of time travel. That's right, time travel, or as it is called in-game, time leap. Although not exactly spoiler territory. If you do not want to hear or see anything story related, kindly skip to the next timestamp. Following the in-game events, you will run into literal dead ends, where your party dies even though you have won your boss fights. This will have one of the genesis, which have been collected in the previous entry, react by rewinding time and will have a new timeline branch off. This is a very interesting new take on the Trails games, but unfortunately without much player agency. You cannot, for example, avoid two dead ends for the same events. And it is in this that I find it a double-edged sword. What comes across as something novel and interesting quickly does become bothersome, as you'll find yourself battling the same bosses several times over in order to progress through the story. Thankfully, shortcuts to reach said boss a second or a third time are made available, like this ladder for example. Sadly though, what doesn't help in having to fight these boss battles over and over are the choices of NPC players during said boss fights, where choosing to fight the wrong enemy instead of finishing off one who is at low health can and does mean the end of that fight and another retry as a result. Speaking of fights, Trails Through Daybreak 1 introduced us to field battles, a very welcome addition to the series, but one which met with critique from the player base, stating that it was too rough around the edges. Well, to anyone who feels that way, the field battle mechanic in Trails Through Daybreak 2 has been improved upon by several very welcome additions and balancing issues. You can now use cross-charge attacks, allowing you to call in an ally for a strong counterattack after successfully dodging an enemy attack at just the right time, and gain a short-term attack boost to boot. Another new take on the system is the fact that you can preemptively launch a magic attack by holding down the X button, allowing you to become more creative in your approach. The command battles too have been rebalanced and seen some upgrades. You can no longer stack and spam S boosts, but you'll have to use them more strategically. Also, and I really like this one, after you've stunned an enemy and are close enough to a party member to trigger SCLM, activate an S boost and use a normal attack or craft to unleash a brand new X chain with all the animations your screen can support. The S break attacks, however, still take the cake with some beautiful animations. Speaking of fanbase, one of the biggest issues with Daybreak 1 was the omission of minigames, something which this time around have found their way into the game aplenty. Players rejoice as you can fish to your heart's content once again.
I got one.
You can stalk people while trying to remain undetected. You can hack systems by directing a hollow through digital mazes, and there is plenty more.
This is kid stuff. No sweat.
Lastly, I want to touch on performance and quality of life improvements. And let me start off by the latter. In fact, this game features so many of them, I could dedicate an entire video to just that. The maps have become more manageable, highlighting the stores, including vending machines, and displaying which of them have new items in store. The orbments, crafts, arts, items, cooking, and just about every customization option in this game has seen an upgrade to my absolute delight. Adjusting your character to your requirements has never been so much fun, or has seen such a plethora of options, including the Märchen Garten, of course. Personally, when I look at character customization within JRPGs, I immediately think of Xenoblade Chronicles X or Xenoblade Chronicles 3, where you have so much control to create the character specifically tuned to your liking and your needs. Trails Through Daybreak 2 is really close to that level and has so many options. For that alone, for any JRPG fan, it's an absolute delight. The performance is a bit of a different case though, as I have had no issues at all running this game with my Switch OLED docked. In handheld mode though, at times the game suffered from low frame rate and or low resolution, clearly visible in this video. A day 1 patch is coming though. Unfortunately, that won't be available to me at the time of recording, but I sincerely hope it will address most of these issues.
Hey there, Mare. Been a while, hasn't it?
Mare! You again.
All the same, I cannot but recommend picking up The Legend of Heroes Trails Through Daybreak 2 when it releases February 14th, as it is not only a great game and a new height in the Trails series, it is also a clear case of a developer with an ear to the ground, listening to their fanbase, and one who is not afraid of getting creative with their long cherished IP. And with that guys, I am signing off. I sincerely hope you've enjoyed today's video. If you have, be sure to hit that like button as it helps us out a ton, and subscribe to the channel if you're new here. And I will see you next time.